Right, welcome back, fancy lords and ladies. We are going to pick back up our Foundation spoiler series that I started the other day. In that one, we looked at the white, blue, and black commanders, and we're going to take a look at one blue commander that I missed, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the red and the green. After that, be on the lookout because we will also be looking at multicolored and any that we might have not touched on with these first two videos, but let's go ahead and dive in by taking a look at this blue commander, and it's a fun one. So, Kiora the Rising Tide for 2 and a blue. This is a 3/2 legendary creature, Merfolk Noble, and when Kiora enters, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. It has Threshold. Whenever Kiora attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may create Scion of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token. So, um, just like a lot of these monocolored commanders, there's a lot going on here. She really basically has 3 different abilities. And I say that because, even in mono blue, Merfolk Tribal is still very much a real deck. It's got a lot of different tools. It works really well with this Kiora because there's some unblockability tools and things that can get your Merfolk in without having to worry about blocks or anything like that. And obviously, Kiora will benefit from that. I do like that this gives kind of an extra mode to Merfolk in the self mill and trying to load your graveyard and things like that. So, yeah, I'm actually pretty excited for this one. I've always thought Kiora was a cool character, and I like I said, adding that self mill layer to a mono blue Merfolk deck. It's a direction that you really haven't seen it taken before. The fact that the token is legendary in any other color that might matter more, but in blue that really doesn't matter too much. You'll find plenty of ways to get around the legend rule. You'll find plenty of ways to make copies of it that aren't legendary, and so on and so forth. So yeah, excited for this one. Next, we're going to go ahead and dive into, the red commanders. And again, in this series, we're just looking at the new legendary creatures. We're not going to look at the reprints, at least in these spoiler videos. But if that is something you'd like to see, then I'm happy to kind of go through those as well in a separate video. All right, so to kick off our red commanders here, we have Anep, Vizier of Hazaret. This is for 2 and a red. It's a 4/2 legendary creature, Jackal Warrior with Trample. You may exert Anep as it attacks. When you do, exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. All right, so we've got another, definitely another piece for the 99 of these decks that have red and care about casting cards, either from exile or from outside your hand. A 4/2 with Trample will hopefully have a target quite a bit, if not every turn. So, yeah, I don't know that this really is adding a lot as a brand new commander, but certainly as a piece in the 99, it can already slot into some decks. Prosper comes to mind right away, just because it's such a good example of the casting stuff from exile. But, yep, a solid one. This is an uncommon, so I think we're seeing that theme continue from the first video where they're showing a lot more restraint with these uncommon commanders, and that's probably good, if nothing else, at least for the limited formats, just to keep things from getting too wonky. All right, next we have Cleon, Merry Champion, also for 2 and a red. This is a 2/2 legendary creature, Human Soldier, with Double Strike and Heroic. Whenever you cast a spell that targets Cleon, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until the end of your next turn. All right, so again, we've got a commander that's going to be exiling the top card of our library. Heroic is a little bit different angle, certainly a different angle than Anep before her, but yeah, again, I think the uncommon commanders are clearly kind of a tier below our rares and our mythics as far as power. This is certainly doable in mono red. There's no lack of cards that are going to target her. Combat tricks and things like that would work pretty well with the Devil Striker. It might be nice if she was a little bit heftier, started with the bigger power, just to make those kind of comboing off turns where you're trying to target her and pump her multiple times, just to make that pay off even more. But, at uncommon, it's a decent start, and it's certainly something you could build around. Are there better options? Probably. But, yeah, we're going to keep moving along. Next, we've got General Crete. I'm going to guess that's Crete, the Bolt Bringer. Again for 2 and a red. Interesting. So all of our uncommon red commanders here are for 2 and a red. This is a 2/2 legendary creature, Goblin Soldier. Whenever one or more goblins you control attack, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. Whenever another creature you control enters, General Crete deals 1 damage to each opponent. All right, so actually, I was saying we're seeing a pattern here with these uncommon commanders. I think Crete is probably a cut above the rest, if nothing else because of the goblin support in red. It's just so overwhelming. Being able to make tokens and bring them into play and get that 1 damage ping is not difficult at all. Now, we are seeing, again, the pattern of the uncommon commanders being a lot more kind of reserved. Making one red, or creating one 1/1 red goblin creature token with your commander each turn is not a bad thing, but there's certainly much more powerful options in that archetype. There's lots of goblin token creators that can go in that command slot. They'll still be mono red, and they'll give you a lot more per turn, and certainly a much higher ceiling per turn. But the fact that the second ability isn't limited to once a turn, it's not something that's going to shut off once you've made that first token each turn. I think makes Crete a little bit more interesting and certainly a step above in power than the stuff we've looked at so far. So yeah, I kind of like this one. Certainly a good goblin piece, if nothing else, and maybe a little bit more options to build around as well. All right. Next, we've got Gornog, the Red Reaper, again for 200 red. Okay, they've got a type here. So for that 200 red, you get a 2/3 legendary creature, Minotaur Warrior, with haste. Cowards can't block warriors. Okay, so that's a callback to something we've seen before, I believe, in a core set at that. Whenever one or more warriors you control attack a player, target creature that player controls becomes a coward. Attacking warriors you control get +X/+0, where X is the number of cowards your opponents control. We're probably going to want to be playing Strionic Resonators. We're going to want to play some way to make multiple creatures cowards each turn to pump that bonus to our warriors. Definitely a warrior tribal. I believe there's some overlap with Minotaurs and warriors, so that might be a fun direction to take this guy and kind of interesting. Certainly a lot going on with the card. Again, 4 separate lines of text that are all working together. That does give you a good base to build off. I like the cowards and warriors angle. I don't know that there's a ton of support, but there's definitely a few cards that will just kind of automatically slot into the 99 for him and make that a little bit more powerful. This is one I'm interested in because I would like to kind of drill down and look at how many of these cards there are. What kind of warrior support out there works with that theme. Maybe we've got some colorless ways to change all creatures on the board's types or something like that, because that can always get really pretty interesting. So yeah, kind of a cool commander, and I like it quite a bit. All right, next we've got Ivora, Insatiable Air, for 1 and a red. So we finally broke that streak. This is a 1/1 legendary creature, Vampire Warrior. She has trample, and when Ivora, Insatiable Air, enters, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a blood token. All right, so if you're not familiar with blood tokens, these came back during one of the, I believe, return trips to Innistrad, and they are basically just an artifact. It's got 1 in tap, discard a card, sacrifice the blood token, and you can draw a card. Whenever you discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Ivora. All right, so again, we see, uncommon, maybe not as pushed as some other things. I do like Ivora, though, if nothing else, because it's a 2-mana commander where you can start discarding cards and, pumping her. You get that blood token probably every turn because discarding cards in red is not difficult at all. There's tons of effects that let you do that and either draw more cards, get impulsive draw, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it might be kind of interesting to build Ivora. I don't know that her ceiling is particularly high, although, having trample with that last ability is really nice because instead of just making this kind of big dumb creature, you're making a creature that's got some evasion baked in, and that is a big plus whenever you're throwing those counters on it. All right, so last but not least here in red, we've got Kellen, Planar Trailblazer for 1 red. So our cheapest one yet. It's a 2/1 legendary creature, Human Fairy Scout. For 1 and a red, if Kellen is a scout, it becomes a human fairy detective and gains whenever Kellen deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. And then for 2 and a red, we get if Kellen is a detective, it becomes a 3/2 human fairy rogue and gains a double strike. All right, and it keeps the previous ability from the kind of the first level up there. These cards are always kind of fun. I feel like they're a little bit held back by the total cost that you have to sink. But if the first 3 turns of your commander game, kind of being predetermined to maximize Kellen. We don't see a lot of Voltron anymore, but that's kind of a nice little play pattern to be able to just kind of know you're going to have available to you each game. We see again, we've got this exiling the top card of our library, playing that card. So you're going to be able to work around all the stuff in red that cares about that and wants to see stuff exiled and then get cast or played, that kind of thing. So, I think it's pretty neat. Getting Double Strike. I just like Double Strike being on things in red. It just pushes power level up because it's such an aggressive color. It's just a good bonus to be putting on a commander or really any aggressive creature in red. So, yeah, I like Kellen. Definitely interested just on the basis of being one of these adaptive creatures that kind of levels up over time and gains new abilities. So that is our red commanders. Next, we're going to take a look at the green commanders. So, starting to look at our green commanders here. First, we have Bralios of Ferris Band. This is for 3 and 2 green. A star, legendary creature, Centaur Scout. Bralios' power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. Whenever Bralios attacks, draw a card, then you can put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. All right, so we've got quite a few of these creatures in green already, and I think even a few commanders that are as big as your land base, basically. I was kind of praising the 2-drop in red that had trample and was getting bigger over time. Bralios, I think, kind of suffers from a bit of a problem that those other commanders have where, if you don't put trample or some kind of evasion on a creature like this, you really have to work to find ways to use that high power because it's just too easy to chump block. Now, I do like the attack trigger here. That's going to, hopefully make Bralios bigger. It's going to help you ramp. Obviously, green has tons of ways to do it already, but it doesn't hurt to have it on your commander. But I really think that's what you're going to want to do in this deck is try to find some other creatures that would benefit from evasion and then go that route of baking in evasion to your deck. It will be a big creature. It will be a pretty scary attacker. And, if you can maybe build in some board wipes, colorless board wipes, or, the green board wipe. I think it's Azuri's Predation where you drop a bunch of beasts and hopefully wipe out an opponent or two's board. Then maybe that's a way to clear the path. But yeah, not a bad commander, just maybe a little limited by that lack of evasion overall. All right, next we've got Dionys, I'm going to guess. Dionys Elvish Archdruid for 3 and a green. This is a 3/3 legendary creature elf druid. Elves you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped during your turn, untap it and put a +1/+1 counter on it. This ability triggers only once each turn. My goodness, for an uncommon, that's powerful. Elves don't need a lot of help. This is kind of like goblins, where to reach those upper echelons of power as an elf commander, they basically have to make it just busted beyond comprehension at this point. But certainly as a 99 card, this is an auto include in most elf decks, I would think. And as a commander, I like it just because you've got so much ramp to get your 4-drop commander out, and then this just adds more ramp on top of that. I believe there's already some elves that care about +1/+1 counters. Obviously, this is a great way to add on to that strategy, or maybe even Helmet as the commander. So, yeah, not a lot to talk about with elves at this point, but this is a different take. Giving this to each elf you control brings changelings into it, and things like that. So, yeah, really, really strong. All right, next we've got Hurska Sweettooth for 2 and a green. This is a 3/3 legendary creature bear, and whenever Hurska attacks, create a food token. Whenever you gain life, you may pay Selesnya mana, so a green or a white mana. When you do, target creature gets plus X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you've gained. All right. I've always kind of liked life gain. It's just a nice theme with all the support. It's kind of, you know, works really well with itself by just building up your life total to these crazy amounts. Commander, it's always possible someone's going to get around that with commander damage, but I don't know that this is the most powerful example of kind of a life gain commander. There's, again, kind of like with elves and goblins, this is a space where you have to compete with some really powerful commanders already. But certainly it's strong, and if you want to build more around food than just life gain, then this is a commander that's going to give you kind of both modes, a food ability and a life gain ability. So I think you could take it that route. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, even at Mythic, I wouldn't be surprised if this is more of just an average commander and an average card in kind of limited and standard and things like that. I don't dislike it, but I also think there's just things that are doing this better. So. All right, moving on. We've got Loot Exuberant Explorer, for 2 and a green. It's a 1/4 legendary creature beast noble. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and then for 4, 2 green and tapping Loot, you can look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control from among them and put it onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. All right, so again, there's tons of kind of overlap and cards already in green that will let you play those extra lands each turn. So it's nice to have that in your command zone and just be able to have one stick on the board, hopefully by turn 2 every game, since this is green, but definitely by turn 3 every game, you should be able to start dropping extra lands. The second ability is certainly strong. It's a little not overpriced, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised by how fairly priced it is. 6 mana is not hard for green to reach, but it's still a significant amount that you're going to need to sink into that. Top 6 cards is pretty good. That's a wide range. You need that with this deck because all of these commanders and strategies that focus on playing a bunch of turns each, or playing a bunch of lands each turn, you really need to sink some extra land slots into those decks. And so I like that Loot is giving you, not top card, not top 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that. Top 6 is a good spread for that to hopefully find a creature and hit on something that's really worth playing. I think you'd probably focus mostly on land ramp in this deck, not necessarily a bunch of small mana dorks or something like that. So that might help you thin the number of creatures down to just the more impactful ones. But yeah, a fun mono green commander here. I can see why, I've kind of seen the picture around and people pumping this one up a bit. It's definitely got some potential. All right, and then we get to just the fun commander in green, and maybe just the fun commander for the whole set. Most of these I haven't seen beforehand, but this one I've definitely seen beforehand, and I objectively love it. I can't help it. Shrufus Sproutsire, I'm going to be able to say it too. For 2 and a green, it's a 1/1 legendary creature Saproling with trample, and whenever a Saproling you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green Saproling creature tokens. I love this little guy. And actually, I haven't seen. I think obviously we've all seen a lot of memes. We've seen kind of the jokey praise for this commander, but 3-drop, there's tons of Saproling support. There's no reason this can't be a pretty good commander. I think you might be a little hard pressed to find enough in just green to support it. There's Saprolings in other black and white as well, and it'd be nice to add them in. But it's a slam dunk for the 99 of a Saproling deck. And it is a really fun card. The art's amazing, obviously. But also one where maybe if we're getting some other Saproling support in Foundations, I haven't actually looked at all the 99 cards yet that we're getting as well. I could see this being pretty decent. Changelings are Saprolings, and there's some Changelings in green. Realm Walker, immediately comes to mind because it's just such a strong card. And it really helps kind of propel green decks to just put out more and more and more on their board. So yeah, I like this guy. I think it's, the memes and stuff are worth it. It is definitely really fun. The art is really fun, but there's also real potential here for a fun Saproling deck that has some power to it. All right, next let's look at Slinza, the Spike Stampede for 4 and a green. This is a 5/5 legendary creature beast. Beast spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. Each other beast creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever Slinza or another creature with power 4 or greater enters, you may pay 1 and a Gruul mana, so a red or a green mana. When you do, Slinza fights target creature you don't control. Okay, so I'm glad to see that we've got Gruul mana in that last ability, because I wouldn't say I've been, holding my breath for a Beast Commander, but if they're going to introduce a Beast Commander, Gruul, I think that's definitely the right color pairing for it. So glad to see that. Again, they've stacked so much on top of just the first ability. Just being able to cast Beast for 2 less would already be a card you could build around, even just in mono green. But when you put these other abilities with it, this just becomes a pretty busted commander. There's lots of beasts. It's a fairly common creature type. It's gotten support before. It's got Planeswalker support with Garruk's, bunch of different versions of Garruk at that. But yeah, the whole power 4 or greater, I love that theme in green. Tons of support. It's exactly what green wants to be doing anyway. And if you can find a way to make Slinza indestructible or something like that, obviously, give him Death Touch, Lifelink, just make that a second ability even better, then yeah, this is a really fun build around, and don't be surprised if we see this on the channel, because I just like it a ton right away. All right, and next we're going to look at Sutina, Speaker of the Tajuru. I believe this is the last green commander for 2 and a green. It's a 2/2 legendary creature Elf Scout, and when Sutina enters, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Whenever Sutina attacks, you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creatures. As a mono green commander, I don't know that these two abilities really put Sutina in too interesting a spot. We've already seen an elf commander that I think is way more interesting as something to helm your elf deck. What I do like about Sutina, though, is the potential here as a 99 card. I think she can go in these 3, 4, or 5 color decks. If you have a landfall theme, obviously she's even better, because you're potentially getting lands back and then getting a ton of land triggers. Now, attacking as a vanilla 2/2, that's not great. That's pretty fragile. I don't know that you're going to have a lot of juicy targets to be attacking into as a 2/2, but yeah, overall, pretty decent card for the 99. Good fixing if you're playing in a limited format or something like that. And then obviously for landfall decks, she gets a major boost with that second ability for that, if you can find a way to hopefully keep her alive. And even as a 3/3, not a great attacker, so you need ways to keep her alive, ways to maybe help her get through with unblockable damage or something like that, so you can keep triggering that second ability. All right, so that is our red and green commanders. Thank you so much for watching. If you've stuck around, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you like the content. It definitely helps out the channel. There is a link down there in the bottom left to all the decks that we've covered in our Fancy Tickler series, which are the deck techs on the channel. If you have anything you'd like to add to the description of these commanders, maybe there's something interesting about one of these commanders that you think I needed to highlight a little more or something like that, feel free to leave a comment. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and keep playing Commander.